Welcome back. Sorry about the gap, about my absence. Lots happened since the last video that I posted. I've had a shave, you may have noticed. Also, school's opened again, and I had a baby. Well, not me personally, but my wife had a baby. And all those things have meant that I've been pretty rubbish at getting up new content. However, for those of you that are in my class, you will already know you've been sent home again. And so I'm starting to post videos again. So by popular request, here we are. Now, we've covered, both in my online videos and in class, the first theory of social influence, which is known as situational factors. Those are the external factors which influence people's behaviours. And we're just going to look at quickly the criticisms of that theory before we dive into the study which supports that theory today. So as you can see next to me, the criticisms are up here, nice summary for you if you want to jot those down, make revision cards or whatever. But just to run through those really briefly, one of the main criticisms of the situational factors is the fact that they are deterministic. Now, hopefully you'll remember that there is kind of a debate or two opposite perspectives when we talk about lots of different things in psychology, and that is determinism and free will. Free will being the idea that every person can just choose their behaviour, and that's what they do. They are making those choices consciously and deliberately, and they're free to make any choice that they want. And that tends to be the default perspective that most people fall to. However, science and psychology often take a different perspective. We tend to look at things from a perspective of determinism. That is, that the decisions that a person makes are determined by certain factors that influence them. Now, obviously, we've been talking about situational factors. So a criticism of situational factors is that it kind of undermines or ignores an individual's free will, their ability to just decide for themselves, and it explains people's behaviour in this context of we can explain why they've behaved that way. It was because of the situation they were in. So for example, people will start smoking even though they know it's bad for them because they're in a situation where majority influence causes them to conform. Or people obey authority and do things that they would never normally do because the authority figure puts them in that agentic state that Milgram talked about, and they stop thinking about what they would do and they're just doing what they're told. So that's the main criticism, but there are some others as well, which kind of link to the specific theories that form situational factors. So the first one is that de-individuation and collective and crowd behaviour, which we talked about, we framed in quite a negative way, and the theories, both by Riker and by Le Bon, explain how human behaviour ends up worse because of crowd behaviour. However, that's not always the case. It can also be positive, and that's not considered in those theories that we looked at and talked about. Along with it being deterministic, it also tends to be reductionist, and that means that it ignores the complexity and the rest of a person and only focuses on a single aspect. So in these situations, we're looking at majority influence or your culture, and we're ignoring the fact that every person has a huge range of factors that influences the way that they are and the way that they behave. And we sometimes call those individual differences. So it ignores that people are individuals and treats them all as if they will behave the same in the same situation, which we know is not true. And then finally, this is a little along kind of the usefulness debate. It kind of removes the responsibility for people's actions from themselves. Because if we subscribe to situational factors, basically what we're saying is your decisions were not really your decisions. You acted that way because of the situation that you were in. And if that's the case, can people be blamed for the things that they do? If a person gets involved in crime because that's what their friendship group is doing, can we blame them? We're saying that it's not their responsibility. It's not their fault. It was determined by their situation. Similarly, if someone gets involved in a riot, they get swept up in that situation, should we be arresting them and putting them in prison when this theory says everyone is going to act that way anyway? So that's the criticisms of these situational factors which we've talked about in class.